Welcome to Unlearn, the podcast that redefines the playbook for modern business leaders.
In a world where yesterday's truths are today's challenges, every episode brings you bold ideas and visionary strategies to thrive in a world where the only constant is change.
Let's dive in. Welcome to Unlearn. Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the Unlearn podcast, where you will learn a lot of stuff from me and some stuff from my amazing co-host. Just kidding.
And none from the guest, because Asher will cut the guest off.
That's true. I do apologize. So somebody told me that last time I did that. So I'm going to try not to do that this time. Right? So, anyways, let's talk about what just happened over this weekend. So I'll tell you guys a little bit of where we are in this AI economy, right? So I had to go to Home Depot to get a circuit breaker, right? Because one of the circuit breakers in my house blew up, right, or something. And so I'm using ChatGPT because, as you all know, I'm not necessarily an electrician, right? So I'm like,
this whole thing sounds very safe, by the way.
Exactly. So check this out, right? So I walk around, I look at a lot of contractors in there. Everybody's on their phone. And I'm like, what are you guys doing, right? And so people are using ChatGPT to find the right parts, workshop where it fits in, look at the measurements and stuff. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll do this, but I couldn't find the right part, so I decided to go to Lowe's. And so then I go to Lowe's, and right as soon as I enter Lowe's, because Lowe's has much better customer service than Home Depot today, at least that was my experience, right? The helper comes in and is like, hey, let me help you find this part. So I said, okay, great. Let me help you find this. Help me find this part. So then I go and I'm looking at this part, and then he gives me the part. But because, I always have to trust but verify, right? So I open up ChatGPT and I'm like, I take a picture of it and say, is this a match? Now, right when I do that, this helper goes, hey, you should probably use Claude or Gemini, because ChatGPT will always agree with you to everything you say. And I just paused it. I'm just looking at this person. I'm like, are you a Lowe's helper, or are you a forward deployed engineer for Lowe's? What are you? So my point to tell this story is this is everywhere. Now, this could be because I'm in Silicon Valley, and this could be an anomaly, right, in Silicon Valley. But this is the extent of where we are in the AI economy, that people really understand the difference between these LLM models. So anyways, Kelly, what do you have to say?
I think that's interesting that the normal process is to make sure you have a human in the loop when you have AI trying to make task or automation, but you did it opposite. You asked the human for advice, and then you needed AI in the loop to validate the human. So maybe it's a new workflow.
As you know, as being a startup CEO, I'm short on time here, so I really had to go run back to my house and get this thing fixed, because I had to prepare for this podcast. There's more important things going on. So anyways, there's another interesting stat that, according to Menlo Ventures, 1.8 billion people consume AI today, right? 600 million daily and 1.2 billion weekly or monthly, right? So clearly these are huge numbers. Now, then I was like, okay, well, let's find out some more data. As I was doing research for this podcast, there are 300 million companies, according to Statista, right? So now, you remember last time we were talking about the CEO priority is that they are the chief AI officer and they have to drive adoption and expansion. So then I'm like, okay, well, clearly there's a role that services companies play, right? So let's do a quick pop quiz, right? What was the first use case to get automated with AI in the Fortune 500, Kelly?
Customer agent?
That is not correct.
Well, let's let the guest take a crack at it.
Well, go ahead.
Customer service agent, maybe?
No, that is not correct. So that's what everybody thought. It is application tracking systems.
Wow.
That's surprising, because HR is usually the last one to adopt technology.
That was the first one. So anyways, what we should do in this podcast is spend some more time on services companies, right? So for services companies, there are system integrators, there's consulting firms, there's agencies, there's managed service providers, there's cloud solution providers, there's technology and management consulting firms. And as I was editing this transcript from ChatGPT, it was saying just say services companies. I think more people understand that. But for our audience, there's tons of different segments in the services company world. So let's narrow in that today, and then let's specifically talk about technology consulting firms and system integrators, because I think they're actually at the center of this shift a lot more because they have to drive C-suite transformation. But first, we should introduce our guest. Josh, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I know I'll tell the audience a little bit of a story about us, but tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do for your day job, and then let's dive in.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Usher and Kelly, for having me on your podcast. Believe me, the past 5 minutes, I've laughed enough that I haven't laughed in the whole day. So
You're
thank you
still
so
here.
much.
He hasn't left yet.
We're just fine.
We're just getting started, yeah. So, I'm Ajaz Ahmed Siddiqui. I'm part of the Microsoft's GTM team based out of Dublin in Ireland. And I particularly cover the AI business solutions portfolio of Microsoft. What it essentially means is it's a combination of various enterprise applications and a huge portfolio of our agentic platform, which is Copilot Studio, Power Platform, and pretty much the whole suite of it, right? So that's what I do at Microsoft. Prior to this, I've spent about 10, 12 years in the industry and in the ecosystem. Started off as a business analyst in an ERP world. That was my first lessons into the enterprise applications, you can say. And then had a small stint of about a year as an entrepreneur for a B2B marketing activation company. Uh, and then I spent some time on the SI side in the US, actually, with a boutique Microsoft and Oracle SI partner based out of Santa Clara, with a huge presence offshore back in India. That was a truly a, a great learning experience for me. And I was telling Kelly about my time in the US earlier. So really enjoyed my time back in the US. After that, I've spent about 5 years with Oracle in Dubai uh, as part of their enterprise applications team, going after some of the large accounts within the UAE and the Middle East. And then for the past 4 years now, I'm with Microsoft. So particularly, Asher, I think why this topic resonates with me is, of course, I've been part of the ecosystem day in and day out, working with SIs, but I've been an SI myself in the past. So I feel
Okay.
the pain. I definitely feel the pain in terms of what SIs are kind of going through. It's a massive shift,
Yeah.
having seen this. And I think luckily I've been through all the shifts, like have seen that on-prem install base conversion to SaaS, and now you're talking about uh, SaaS is a dead narrative, which then moves on to the agentic narrative. So, right, it's been a lot happening. So, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, there's clear. Okay, so
yeah.
your title on LinkedIn says applied AI, and I've seen these words applied AI everywhere. Right? What is applied AI?
Okay, great, you got me there. Uh,
I'm just genuinely curious.
They're
I'm
like,
like,
we don't know. We just wanted to sound good.
I was in another call. They were like applied AI, and I'm like, what's applied AI?
They help you apply the AI to your business. Don't ask any more questions.
Got it.
let's just say, so applied AI is basically the industry AI. That how do I take
Ah,
the AI and translate it for your business, basically, right? So firms like the frontier firms would have engineering teams calling themselves applied AI, right?
okay.
Um, but it depends on how you want to translate this, right? So,
Yeah.
because my portfolio has evolved over the years, right, within Microsoft, right? So the evolution has been from B2B SaaS to an agentic platform now, right? Does that mean we don't sell B2B SaaS anymore? Yes, we do. That's the core product still, but it has been infused with a lot of AI and agentic scenarios. At the same time, you're having loads of customers who already have these B2B SaaS, but now they want to move on to the next phase of their journey where, okay, that how do I use this loads of business data that I have and maybe build some customer facing AI solutions on top of it, right? not expense agents, but actual commercial solutions. That's what you would call the applied AI.
Got it. Okay, so Kelly, it is apply the AI.
I know it's what it sounds like. But
Got it.
how
Okay, sweet.
would you distinguish between a forward deployed engineer? Would you say that's a subset of what you do, that you have forward deployed engineers?
Yeah, definitely. So yes, we are moving in that area very actively. So I am particularly on the GTM team, which is largely on the commercial side of things. But on large pursuits, and of course, our forward deployed engineering team is still nascent. But look, I would like to kind of take a step back because we had some shape or form of FDEs already in the ecosystem in our organization, right? We have things like customer success, fast track, and a lot of other resources within the company.
Yep.
But now, since the advent of the FDE after Palantir, and now all the other frontier firms kind of adopting that. And in fact, what I recently saw in Dublin, Pfizer hiring an FDE for that CEO transformation office. So that
Yeah,
was really,
Interesting.
makes sense.
yeah. So that was a huge signal to me that in terms of like that this job is going to explode in the next couple of months or years, you can say,
Yeah.
right? So yes, so to answer your question, yes, we do have, but it's still nascent, focused on strategic high value customers at the moment. It's not like a mass explosion across the organization at the moment.
Yeah. Translation is people with big bucks. Okay. Anyways,
To put it more crudely,
just simplify the concept, right? We're just unlearning how to be like. All right.
is that how you present to the board, Asher? Big bucks.
It's much simpler at PL. All right, let's talk about some cool stuff for our audience, right? So the thing we can do in this podcast is just go macro level and then bring it down to just SIs, and then also bring it down to people that are that have roles in these SI companies, right? And so the one story that we should talk about is what I call how America is becoming a platform company. And the story that is worth sharing is David Sachs, who is a well-renowned venture capitalist who is responsible for America's AI policy, was at Davos, right? And so he got asked the question, "How do you know if you've won the AI race?" And then his answer was like very simple, and he said like we will win the race when everybody around us uses our products and our services. And then he gave this example of these are his exact words. And he said, "We know from Silicon Valley that the companies that end up becoming huge are the ones that create ecosystems. It's as a technology company, you want to have the most apps on your app store. You want to have the most developers writing on top of your API. You want to become a platform company." And the reason why this is interesting is because at Davos, every major leader is there, right? And so if you've got this conversation happening at that level, that means that people that have capital, which would be investors, right? And then people that help companies grow, which would be board members, are all talking about how do we get other people to build on top of us. And so if you bring all of this stuff down to our careers, like I think our CEOs fully understand that they have to create ecosystems and they have to move their companies into the platform economy, because the country is also moving in that way. So to me, this is like a very big macro shift. And I'm a big believer in macro shifts create career moments. And the people that are in partnerships who look at solving business problems from partnerships have a unique opportunity to, again, push their companies into a into a mature partner function, and then go create value for their partners and become chief partner officers. And then when you become chief partner officers, we'll talk about this a little bit later in the podcast, but you then get budget and authority. And so that, to be, I thought, was like very interesting macro trend that was happening that creates a unique opportunity for folks listening to this podcast, but also people that are just pursuing partnerships as a career. So thoughts, Kelly?
I think it's nice validation to hear someone in that position talking about the power of platforms as the core business model. I think for people who have been following the largest companies in the world for quite some time, the vast majority of them have been running platform business models. But I do think there's been a disconnect to the rest of the market, which is why we have this problem where a lot of partner leaders can't get executive buy-in. So I think getting this high level validation of the concept that we're in this time of transformation, who will be the new platform is kind of everything's being shaken up in market. And so I think there's like a question, and whether you're looking at it globally, country wise, or individual private company wise, things are being changed. So I agree with you. It's definitely career making moments for people who seize the chaos to center everyone around their initiative, essentially.
Jaz?
Yeah, I I think I see that as statement very intentional in terms of how governments are trying to kind of control the narrative around the leadership of AI, and it has to do a lot versus East versus West uh, struggle in that aspect. And I think it, I see that as like a clear messaging to the C-suite that you gotta lean in and grow this and help each other build this ecosystem. And I think that's what we're seeing pretty much in the West right now is, and I think you would start seeing that. We've seen that in the US, but you kind of see that in the Europe as well now, that the governments have started leaning in, and uh, the countries like France and Germany, they
Yep.
want to take the leap forward in that area. So very intentional, and of course, being working for a tech company, we've already seen this. Especially Microsoft is going through a transformation within a transformation, right? Because right now, if you see this, we have like two parallel words running inside the company. Like the so you would be aware, Jay Parikh and his organization, essentially they're building for the future, right? That's what that organization, while the business as usual is being run by the existing set of the company and the leadership, right? So, and in fact, I wrote something today on LinkedIn. Exactly 12 years ago, Satya was uh, uh, hired as a CEO, right? He was promoted as a CEO. Uh, and I think from 300 billion to 3 trillion is the market cap, uh, is what Microsoft has seen over the past 12 years.
Right.
So that tells you a lot about the platform. And I think if you hear Satya every time he talks about this platform shift, right?
Yep.
He talks about the raw materials of the factory, and then how do you build the building blocks, and how you need to be ready for that era when everybody's going to be ready for it, right? So yeah, it's a very intentional messaging in my opinion.
Cool. So, folks, if you want to listen to more of that podcast, you can go check out the Inside America's AI Strategy episode of the All In podcast. Now, when you think about this macro trend, right, and you think about VPs of partnerships or chief partner officers, right, like their job at one level, to what you said, Joss, is if you were a new gen company, you're basically born in this economy, right? But if you were not a new gen company, you have to make yourself relevant in this economy. And so I saw this story, like actually Bobby Morrison, the ex-CRO of Shopify, made this post, and he was praising the work that Kate Johnson, the CEO of Lumen, has done with transforming the company. And then I looked at it and I was like, I have no idea what this actually means. But let me go do some research, right? And so I started like researching the company. And so Lumen used to be called CenturyLink, which is a traditional telecom company, right? And they sold fiber, right? And then Lumen CenturyLink ended up acquiring this company called Level 3 Communications, and then Level 3 had this global infrastructure that they had created, and they also had a lot of like enterprise customers. And so they rebranded as Lumen, and then they basically said that, hey, we're not going to be a telco company anymore, but we're going to provide the best connectivity for the AI infrastructure. And so they've basically figured out how to lay, I think it's like 16.6 I think it's miles or billion miles or something like that, like of fiber that connects all of the data centers that hyperscalers like yourself are using. But they're layering in apps in there, they're layering security in there, and so they've taken this one product, which was fiber, which is very commoditized, right, and said, how do we make this thing be the center of everything that's happening? And so the product is the same, it's just positioned differently, and has now become essential because if data, this game is all about data, right? So if data transfer fast and then workloads can move fast between all the hyperscalers and stuff, then Lumen actually becomes essential to their conversation, and they call it the connected ecosystem. And so for people that are listening to this podcast and they're thinking about how do I now what are the examples in the market where leaders have taken where they are and made themselves essential and relevant to this AI wave? Well, Lumen would be one great example. I know our good friend Tim Acker is there. He's running channel sales there. So shout out to Tim. But this would be one great example that people can take some inspiration from.
Yeah, good to know that. Didn't know.
Well, Kate used to be in ex Microsoft, right? So I think as well.
Yeah, I knew CenturyLink back in those days, but didn't know that they have kind of rebranded themselves and
So the
repositioned.
rebrand. Oh, sorry. The rebrand makes sense, but is there an AI component to what they're doing? Because it sounds like you said they're connecting to apps and they're connecting to other systems, which is the platform play. But is there some way that they're tapping into agents or LLMs on this?
Well, they didn't say that much, and I didn't necessarily read all of that detail today. But what I did capture was they wanted to stay at the infrastructure level to power all of the LLMs and all of the AI agents. And so they're basically just saying like, hey, if we give you the fastest connectivity between all of the places where data is stored, we are essential to what you want to do, whether it's AI or not. And that just happens to be one of the most important things for AI.
Very interesting, yeah.
Super. Okay, let's go to the next story, right? And the next story is actually where Joz and I actually connected because, Joz, I think you wrote a paper, correct me if I'm wrong, and then you did a bunch of posts on the role of SIs in this Gen AI era. And the reason why we're here in this podcast at this level is because at this time is because we talked about the macro trend. I gave you guys an example of a company that is refounding themselves, right, to make themselves relevant. But then it's really the SIs who have to go stitch those workloads together into solutions. But there's something happening in the SI world itself, and Josh definitely has a point of view on it. So tell us about like the inspiration to write this paper. I'll admit that it took me like 3 weekends to read it because, as Kelly knows, I don't like to read. So I'm much better.
You should be honored. Asher reads like one book a year, so you're in rarefied company that he read the paper.
No.
So tell us
Thank
about
you so much, Asher, for taking time to read through it and reviewing it and giving me your feedback. Right, I did that torture to a couple of folks, including you. But the feedback has been very valuable, right? So look, as I said, coming from an SI world myself, right? So it so happened we were doing, so at Microsoft, we do our channel partner summit across EMEA once a year, right? And I was at a casual table with a bunch of my partners, right? We just having casual conversation, and there are partners from Middle East, Germany, UK, Ireland, right? And they're from all across, and they're largely enterprise applications partners, SIs, boutique SIs in their own way, focused on industries and such, right? And then we would have just come out from keynotes where we were talking about agents and how the platform is going to move and things like that. And then a question on the table was, okay, guys, how do we evolve our own business when this thing happens, right? When we are saying that SaaS is dead, The enterprise applications would be system of records, there'll be databases. The users of these systems will be agents and not actual users anymore, right? What's the implication, right? And it was a very profound question and came from a very genuine uh, way of thinking in terms of like, what do I do? Yes, still we do have digital transformation projects going on, uh, but what happens next then, right? So it started from there on, and in fact, after a week or so, I kind of took a night and thought about it and started writing around it, right? It turned out to be like a 2,000 word, 3 page essay, but then gave it to a few folks locally here to read upon. And they said, okay, you should add these areas in there. So it ended up becoming like a 7 chapter essay, which I decided to kind of then post like chapter by chapter on LinkedIn, right? So that essentially was the inspiration. So it's more of like a point of view. I don't like see myself as an expert in this area, but I would say that I have a point of view, having been in the system for a decade and have worked as an SI. And look, when I say this, I'm not worried about the big SIs or the GSIs of the world, right? Because as you know, they would have multiple practices, right?
Yeah.
Enterprise applications is one of their practice. They're already doing great on data and AI side. They have infra and security and productivity practices, right? So I'm not worried about them. And it's the long tail. And in your previous podcast, I know you guys talked a little bit about with Kathleen about the long tail and the enablement.
Yep.
And I can definitely relate to that. All OEMs or the vendors, they do struggle with the enablement and the pace with which they move. They cannot really, the long tail cannot keep up the pace. Let's put it in a very simple way, right? And they often struggle to kind of rapidly evolve and then match the pace, right? So that's where the problem comes in. So that's where I saw the gap, and that's where I felt that okay, this message would resonate, right? So now, what exactly does that point of view says, right? So it
Yep.
essentially is that the SIs need to accept that they need to evolve, right? It's they need to stop the leadership within the SIs or the practice leader, the delivery leaders, right? It's not a threat for you anymore, right? Let's accept this that this change is coming. We can talk about the implications of it, but the first thing is the acknowledgement that yes, it's an opportunity for you to pivot into the agentic world. And I see this as like a twofold pivot, right? First, you're being a customer zero yourself, wherein can you now look into your delivery practice or the methodology and see which part of my delivery uh, can be converted into an agent scenarios, right? Can there be a discovery agent? Can there be a data migration agent and things like that, right? Uh, you used to do templates in the past, right? The implementation templates and those. So I see a lot of that work, uh, which used to be templated, uh, can be done by agents now, right? So that's the first part of the story, right? That you see yourself as a customer zero and start doing that for your own delivery practice. Then the other bit of it is for your customers, right? And I do have examples while talking to the customers and to the partners where your customers are going to start asking you, uh, how about these number of hours, right? We've been billing our customers for implementation on man hours, right? The man days of and the hours, right? Now that whole equation kind of changes with AI. AI kind of breaks that equation because you had somebody like a junior person or a senior person doing a task taking 40 hours, right? Now you give that to a junior person with an AI assistant. He does it in like less than 80% of the time, right? Now how do you build that right? How do you start build that? Are you going to lose 80% of your revenue, or you're going to charge higher rates, right? So that whole equation kind of changes. I know it's like not everybody sees it or feels it immediately, but it's going to start coming in. And there are some great stats which I kind of came across when I was researching for that essay. Like, for example, McKinsey, they're saying that 20 or to 25% of their um, services revenue came out of the outcome based pricing last year, right? So we need to unpack that a little bit, maybe in your next follow up question. But that's my view there, and maybe uh, I'll stop there so that we can like further
Sure.
build up on that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So sounds like the business model that the SIs have had, which is we will rent out time of our experts, because for SI companies, the assets is humans. Right. For technology companies, the asset is actually not humans; it's actually the code, right, and the product and stuff, right, and the buildings and things like that. So services companies spend a lot of time enabling the people that are on their staff, and they spend a lot of time in their growth. And I know from talking to our own management consulting friends, they love the job because they get to work with some of the smartest people, some of the most motivated people that would work very long hours, and they have a huge size impact because they have access to the C-suite. So things that they work on actually change the direction of companies. Now, with the same, with that said, in partner land, we know that services companies feed off of multipliers, right? So, like for every $1 of Microsoft spend, I think
Yeah.
services companies make $7 or something like that, right? And then that there's lots of studies been done on that. So if let's say vendors are going to come up with agents who can deploy themselves and maintain themselves and help customers come to an outcome, there's technically no deployment needed, right? And then on the services side, if there's no deployment needed, then you're essentially just helping with change management, which is enabling everybody else in the company to understand how to use these agents. And uh, and that's not all of the work, right? Because the configuration of the systems, the security analysis, the upgrades that are needed, the devices, like all of that is actually where that multiplier comes from. And so I would say, one, the business model is at risk, but then also there are vendors like this article that I saw by an IBM executive saying that consulting companies just need to become software companies to survive the AI boom, right? So on one side, the business model is at threat, and on the other side, the vendors are calling them to actually become much more than who they are. So the C-suite in these companies is one has a business model problem, but then they also have a transformation problem. So they have to like look at themselves and then start building towards a different future, to what you were saying. And so in my mind, it's like, let's just take a look at the number of jobs that are out available for these companies. And there was actually a chart by Revilio Labs that shows from 2021 to 2025, the entry level jobs have either stayed consistent or gone down. But almost all the jobs, there was a peak in 2022, and then there was since then, job posting for consulting roles has come down every single year till the time we are today. So it would be interesting to have you unpack that, because you're seeing this on the other side, right? Because you're working with these SI companies quite a bit. So how are they now preparing themselves to be disrupted? And what type of systems are they putting in place, or are they going to reskill their entire staff and take some staff out? Like how are those decisions being made?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. And look, this is what, and if I were to kind of take a step back onto your point regarding deployments, right? So yes, definitely the deployments are going to change how it used to look like in the past, right? Where in some cases the ERP CRM deployments used to be multi months or multi year deployments, right? Those timelines are going to shrunk by a sizable number, right? And part of that would be using agents within the delivery itself, right? Now, I think that's an easily understood part of the story because the SIs are quite competent in that aspect, right? At the same time, look, for example, for the Microsoft SIs, they've been really good at building bolt-ons or add-ons on top of
Mhm.
the SaaS solutions, right? Now, what's happening now is you have had these accelerators or add-ons, right? Now, at the same time, the vendors are going to come up with their own embedded agentic scenarios, right?
Exactly.
Right. Uh, so you're scrambling here that, okay, what do I do? What do I not do? Right? Where do I lean in? Right? And your remark around the IBM exec saying the services company needs to become software company. And that's exactly my point of view here as well, right? Uh, and when I wrote that essay, I looked into the Palantir's model, and an ex-employee of Palantir wrote a really nice essay about how they actually worked, right? So I call it the Palantir playbook that the SIs needs to kind of just take it and learn a lot from it, right? What Palantir did, right? First of all, they went after the difficult industry, right? So they went after aerospace, defense, manufacturing, healthcare, cybersecurity, right? Areas that nobody wanted to touch, right? So they went after the complex problems, right? So when I say this, you are an SI and you're saying that, I'm going to create an expense agent or an HR payroll agent and things like that, right? No, stop. Because those are going to come up by default by anything that you see on the roadmap of your vendor, or if it's a universal use case, right? There's no point you working in those areas. Your mode is, okay, you have worked in manufacturing for years. Understand, get the tribal knowledge from your functional consultants and everyone across, right? You need to have these pods created. And if you go back to the Palantir example, they had FDEs and they had PDs, right? So FDE would go on site, bring in all the know-how, and draw the solutions and give it to the product engineer, and the product engineer will build a solution around it, and then it ended up becoming like a foundry of solutions for them. So, and that's how Palantir was able to achieve like an 80% gross margin, wherein if you compare it with Accenture is at 32% gross margin, right? So what we all have to learn from a Palantir example is that pivot from a services company to a product company while still being a consulting company. They still call themselves a consulting company, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's my opinion, that you need to go after complex, find your moat, find your sweet spot where you have lots of knowledge and you know that industry, understand that field, right? And then build one or two or three agents. You don't need many, right? You don't need many. You and then find a way to make them reusable, how you can leverage. You build one with one customer, and then of course that IP belongs to the customer, but you have the concept, the know-how, the industry depth, right? That can be reusable and can be built upon. So
I have a question though. Like, the way you're describing this, which I agree is a right strategy, is it really a transformation though? Because if you look at applications as they exist today from vendors who we know are building their own agents, right? So like ServiceNow, you have industry specific, Viva, Healthcare Cloud, they're all building their own agents on top of it. Historically, SIs have built custom widgets around these applications, doing exactly what you said, which is filling gaps that are honestly too niche for the vendor to bother to build into. And they don't have that narrow use case. And so that's how you have them building around all these applications historically and still having that IP. It sounds like moving forward, the vendors and the software companies are going to build agents on top of their existing applications, right? And they're going to be going deep, and that's their core expertise. These SIs will still be finding the niche use cases while consulting on the change transformation and how you change people and processes. Is that really that fundamental of a different dynamic than the one that we had before?
So, so look, to totally on your point, right? It's essentially similar type of work. The only thing kind of changes is that previously you would build on top of an enterprise application. Now you're building on top of platform as a whole, right? Wherein you're just getting context and the business knowledge from your enterprise application, and then you're using an LLM, and then you're also taking different parts of the business and the data from the business to train that, right? Where I feel this kind of evolution and where it will be a little bit different from what we have seen in the past, that we will slowly start seeing, and I often say this to my customers and partners, is that the real value the businesses would see is when they start building customer facing agents, or the commercial agents as I call them, right? Yes, you want to make life easier for your employees internally. You can have number of agents which are going across the organization. But I think the real value will start coming in when the SIs are able to spot opportunities for their customers to make more money, right? Uh, that's where the real transformation piece will kick in for the customers. And that's very slow right now, Kelly, right? Being working across the organizations is what I see is that the we've gone from POC to the production cycle now, but we're still talking internal use cases. We're not talking customer facing, revenue generating activities or revenue generating agents, right? So that's where the real value sits, and that's where the nervousness is right now in terms of that. Do I expose my customers to it? Do I expose my data to it? Right? So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, that's what I feel.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
no, I think that makes sense. I guess at the core of the question is, SIs have great partnerships with application companies, right? And so in your mind, in this new scenario, do you view it as becoming more competitive, that they're competing for the same turf? They're both clearly moving towards outcome-based pricing in different ways, right? Application companies are moving away from subscription towards outcome-based as well. But do you think SIs and application companies become more competitive in this scenario, or the same balance can maintain?
And I have a little bit different view there, Kelly, because I think it's no longer about the SIs and the incumbent vendors. The frontier firms are coming for everybody's lunch.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
yeah,
that totally makes sense. So I'll give
yeah,
you both a couple of data points. Right?
yeah,
One, like McKinsey joining with Amazon and creating the Amazon McKinsey group, similar to what Accenture is doing with Microsoft, right? Is one data point, because McKinsey does only advisory, right? They don't actually have the technology consulting in there. Although they do have Quantum Black, this is a company that they acquired, which was a little bit of a digital transformation company that they have. But I don't know if that's actually a software company in the sense that they have developers all around. But maybe they do, right? But that's one point. So you see an advisory company now moving into more technology consulting and deployments and implementation and stuff like that. And then Wipro made an announcement saying that they're now spinning up an AI advisory and enterprise transformation service. And so for companies like Wipro, all they were doing were implementation, maintenance, and renewals. And because they have thousands and thousands of people sitting inside of these enterprise companies around the world, they're working as support, help desk, and all these like administrative roles, right? So Wipro moving into an advisory company's turf, McKinsey moving into a technology company's turf is actually examples of like what as you're talking about, which is it doesn't actually matter what like you doesn't matter what if you're a software company or a services company, as long as you can solve the problem, you're just going to win and get the money, and then you're going to be able to build a bigger company.
yeah. Just to add to that, when I say that, like OpenAI has CRM solutions already out in the market, right? Anthropic is building
I
industry
don't know
AI.
how robust they are, but
Yeah. Look, that's open for debate, in my opinion. But the fact is that you're going to have a new competitor in the market, right? And a competitor who's born in AI, right? So, like,
It's true, but all of the CRM companies are also building on top of them agents within it, and then you also have native AI CRMs that are also building on top of the LMs. And it sounds like you're of the mind that the LLM companies can somehow do it all, eat all of our lunch. I don't know what that world would look like,
I think
though.
that's what we're saying. Over time, that could happen.
It's possible, but I don't know. With platform dynamics, I think is what makes it tricky, and like the competitive nature of point solutions. It's hard to imagine they're the best of everyone unless they stop letting other people build on them, which I don't think would be in their interest. But what do you think?
Look, I have a slightly I
This is
have a
all about
slightly
sharing your
different view
opinion.
there. Look,
Yeah.
and it's not a paranoia because, of course, this is my bread and butter too, right? But it's the hard reality, in my opinion. Anthropic has so much intentionality around industry and enterprise,
Yeah.
and the fact that they have every vertical available right now, where they have FDEs and the applied AI teams going after marquee logos, right? Um, my LinkedIn often shows me OpenAI for CRM ads, right? So it's out there, in my opinion. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Look, the fact that they're gonna get the network effect, right? So imagine if a company, and they've had recent wins, right? OpenAI had several hundred employees using ChatGPT or Claude in an organization, right? So, in my opinion, the next phase, how we will discover the agents is through the personal assistants, right? So, if you win the personal assistants, that's your window into the AI and the agentic world and the enterprise application world as well, right? So yes, we all will have CRM and ERPs, as Satya called it, as the CRUD databases, right? And that's not far fetched anymore. It's not looking far fetched anymore, right? We are going there. So that's my view there. That yes, there is a long runway for everyone here, but at the same time, these people are coming fast, and they have a lot of pressure because they are private companies in terms of their OPEX and how they manage money and how they show revenue. So it's a very interesting space and up for debate. Yeah.
I mean, that's why they need to roll out those ads, because they're under the financial pressure. They got to get the money going and get rid of the G-rated filters. You know, humans always go for the non-G-rated content.
So, okay, so I think we've done enough around just debating or discussing the future of SIs. And for a later podcast, we should talk about the future of apps, in this world. But I think we should also talk about what the implications of all this activity, where a human who has an agent for advisory, an agent for consulting, an agent for transformation, like what does that mean for partner professionals now, right? And so I want to move the discussion over to this role that Anthropic has listed on their website. And every week we pick one frontier LLM company and go at them in a very friendly way. But this one was very, very interesting, right? So they have a global partner sales manager for SI's role listed. It is 250K OTE. We'll come back to the OTE part a little bit later, right? But the thing that these guys want this person to do, there's like revenue ownership, program design, ops, enablement. So this person has to go run the revenue generating activities, run the program, report on the attribution, and then provide almost board level presentations for 250K OTE. And so I'm like, okay,
it's so interesting. It's the partner professional of the future potentially, though, right? Because they have to be agent empowered to actually do all of this.
Totally. So when I read this, I was mad. And then when I was preparing for this podcast, I was like, actually, I think they're expecting that this person be AI enabled from day one. And as part of onboarding, they create the partner program agent, the partner ops agent, the partner enablement agent for themselves. And that's how they manage their own patch, which is very interesting because I'm going to say 10 years or so ago, I remember sitting in a conference and one really senior sales leader said, like, hey, the sales professionals of the future will actually learn marketing. Because today they're really good at running opportunities when they come in the funnel, but the sales professionals are able to create their own opportunities through marketing efforts will be the future. And a number of really good sales professionals actually understand marketing, and that's actually a little bit of a predecessor to the CRO role, at least the ones that really understand marketing. And so now you have a moment in time where you're going to have a partner professional who has these 4 or 5 agents that they're running their patch, and then you have another partner professional who will have their own agents, and then in the background the agents can talk to each other. So we're going to probably need like a master agent. But I just want to call this out for our listeners, because this is coming, right? And if Anthropic and OpenAI are creating these roles and enabling this function, then other companies are going to take signals from that, and they're going to start moving in this direction. So if you haven't already started thinking about how would you automate parts of your job, you totally should be, and you can take any one of the solutions out there. So I'll pause for some commentary.
I think it's super interesting. I think to make it work, you need governance. So I would say what would make this model work is that they have a kind of partnerships agent at large, and each person in their own domain can customize it within certain parameters. So you lock in like attribution and certain brand guidelines and like parameters that this person just doesn't go completely rogue. And I think that's where things can be headed.
Well, what I think is needed is a higher OTE, Kelly. That's what's needed. But
the agent's still getting half of the OTE, Asher. The agent needs power.
I'm always with the higher OTE.
I had to learn how to code and stuff. Now, luckily, I did learn how to code. But let's move the conversation to, sorry, Josh, do you have a point of view here?
So not on that. What you said about the sales professionals having the marketing know-how, I think that's already coming, because we have seen this not on the partner marketing side, I would say, but on the commercial GTM B2B side. You have account-based marketing so mature now, right, that there's no need of BDRs, right? So essentially those signals are your BDR generated leads, right? They're thrown at your AEs, and they're supposed to go prospect. And then and I see no reason why the similar model cannot be pushed on the partner GTM side.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. My buddy Jamal has a community for people who make $1 million plus in commissions every year. And when I hear him talk about how these professionals operate, they do exactly what you're saying. They look at their set of accounts and they start using marketing tactics to understand the landscape. And then they will actually, one example somebody told me was like this person actually had created ads so that and ads with themselves talking about their point of view. And it pointed them to this audience of executives they had to go after. And when the time they got into the room, a bunch of people already knew him because they had already seen all the ads, which is amazing and super creative, right?
Yeah.
All right, I know we're coming up on time, so let me just cover up a couple more questions, things that I think are important for people in the market. So clearly, we're seeing that like there is a transformation needing to take place in the partner role themselves, right? But then, as we did the State of Partnership Leaders 2026 survey, once again we found that like 59% of our survey takers had less than 1 million in budget. So clearly, to deploy all these tools and to get the reskilling done, you definitely need more budget. And but one thing that was interesting was there was about 8% of the people that we surveyed had 5 million to 25 million in budget, and then 4% actually had more than 25 million in budget. So there's clearly people out in the market that have figured out budget. But I think I want to talk a little bit about budget and authority, because as you move up the ranks, and especially as you look at that seat at the table, in my humble opinion, a partnership leader needs to have both budget and authority, because if you have budget and you don't have authority, you still have to influence everybody around you. I don't think you get your stuff done, right? Like there was an awesome image that I saw of a meeting that Satya was in, and it's floating around X right now, where it's like, hey, you guys have to figure out all the things you need to do and deliver success on with the resources you have, no matter how constrained they are, right? And so I think the partnership leaders should take inspiration from stuff like this and go demand budget and then go demand authority. And authority, in my definition, just to make it simple for people, is what do you say no to? Because you can't be the partnership leader of yesteryear and then keep saying yes to everything. You just have to say, here are the things that I can and cannot deliver on in this budget. And if you need more from me, I just need more budget and more authority. Because if I was an exec, right, like just think about it this way. So there's budget, there's authority, the organization has needs, and then there's a timeline, right? And that stands for BANT, and which is a very awesome like lead qualification mechanism. And trustworthy, like in the new world, I would love to be BANT qualified as an exec, right? And so would everybody else that's in the market today. So I would highly encourage people to go and ask for budget and then ask for authority, but be very clear on the business outcomes that you're going to drive. And then if you need more stats, you can totally visit partnershipleaders.com and we can point you to the State of Partnership Leaders 2026. And I know Kelly has a comment on budget.
I agree with you. I think budget and authority are essential to getting things done at scale. So without it, you're going to be in trouble. But I'm still not understanding what you mean by authority. Do you mean control of people?
Well,
do you mean a high title?
So to me, it's like people, programs, technology, and data. So you need to have authority of all of them, right? And if you want to go and deliver on a build priority for the company, then you need to have direct responsibility for those people, and so you can scope the roles and drive the outcomes, right? Like one of the things that the trend that we are seeing, and you and I keep a track of this, like more and more organizations are putting their build, market, sell, serve, partner resources under the same organization. And there's a very popular cloud company that actually made the last part of the move this week. And so I would say like this trend is at Salesforce, I believe it's happening at your company as well, Kelly. It's happening at Okta, it's happening at Atlassian, it's happening all over the place, right? Where the leaders now have budget, but they also have authority over their resources to then drive the outcomes that they need, that the company needs, in the timeline that it's needed. And that's how I brought BANT back to this convo.
Nice work.
I know. I'm jealous. Like all my CRO friends are being BANT qualified. Why am I not being BANT qualified?
What's your budget, Asher, at Partnership Leaders?
Exactly. That's true. That's a totally different thing. Yeah.
You got disqualified by the ABM agent.
That's true. That's true. All right. One more plug for our big conference Catalyst. It is 5 years for this event. It's going to be a phenomenal time. We have tons of amazing programming going on, but the focus is going to be native AI companies and AI-enabled services companies, because there's lots of demand in both recruiting and re-engaging with these companies in the Partnership Leaders membership community. But folks, if you want to get more information, go to joincatalyst.com. And we definitely hope to see you there. And when I see we, it's both Kelly and I, which I'm assuming Kelly's making it because I just asked her to.
Always. I've been to every single one. Can't miss this one. And it's in New York, so it's going to be fun.
Well, it's also closer for you, right? So,
yeah,
all right.
It's only 70 minutes.
Let's talk about the very last data point, which I thought was super interesting to round this thing out, right? So Salesforce just dropped their State of Sales 2026 report yesterday. And this year, they surveyed 4,000 sales professionals. And one of the things that was interesting in this report was they actually surveyed partner reps, and they call partner reps as sales reps external to the company who sell through revenue sharing agreements. Now, we all know that Salesforce went very hard in this market by introducing Partner Cloud last year. And so this survey had a couple of really interesting data points, right? So they said in one section, they outlined the 3 key levers for growth. One was usage pricing is the leading revenue model, and you're all welcome to download the report from their website and take a look at it. The other thing was using AI for sales planning so that you're not waiting for a whole quarter to finish your plan and then replan. You can like replan every day as you get more information. And then sales teams ramp up investments and partners. So this was very interesting because in 2024, the sales pros that they surveyed, 86% of them were participating in partner selling. And then in 2025, 94% of them said that they're participating in selling. So I would say all of the stuff that we read on LinkedIn where like, partnerships is like not having a great day, et cetera, there may be like places where that's true. But predominantly, I think the world understands that you have to leverage partners to get these deals done, especially when it comes to adoption and expansion, which is a CU priority. So the last point I'll share is when you look at last year's Salesforce survey where they interviewed 5,500 sales leaders, 89% of the sales teams used partner sales. And then their expectation was that 58% of the people that did not use partner sales were actually going to use partner sales tactics, which if you added all of that up, it would mean that 96% of sales teams would use partner sales. So I would say, like give or take a couple of percentage, their analytics and their insights are actually spot on in terms of how they got data from the market, because the 94% of the companies of the people that they surveyed today are using partner selling. So I would say partnerships is having a killer time in the marketplace. And if we take a look back at this podcast, I think the charter is very clear for partner professionals is to figure out how to build their own agents and become more productive, and then go and crush it. So
with authority.
With authority, 100%.
And budget.
Just your thoughts.
No, it was a lovely conversation. Thanks for having me. I think, the closing remarks I would say is the same. I think SIs needs to kind of reinvent themselves. And as you said, there will be a new cohort of SIs who will be born in AI, as we used to call the born in cloud companies.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know, how are we going to call them? Digital natives was the word.
No, they're actually called AI native agencies. So Y Combinator just put out their request for startups, and AI native agencies is one of the things that they're looking for.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So they can invest in an agency.
Yeah. It was interesting.
That's super interesting.
Like, so as the feedback to one of my articles, which was about business transformation model, I was surprised to see some of the comments on the LinkedIn where I know a couple of SIs who used to be at the big SIs and they have started their own shops now. And this person, he posted a public comment saying that, Aijaz, I've been following outcome-based pricing and I've been doing the enterprise applications differently and it's been successful for me. So that's my messaging as like a final message, that if you're not doing this, there will be a new cohort who understands this. They will just do that. They don't have any lacunas or anything to kind of pull them back, right? So yeah, I think good luck to everyone, and thank you so much for having me, Asher and Kelly. This was
thank you so much for spending time with us, listeners. In another episode, we'll actually talk about the role of a partnership professional in these SI companies and what does it mean to progress up through the ranks, even though there's all this chaos happening inside those companies as well. So I think that would be a good thing to explore as we pick topics for future podcasts. But outside of that, Kelly, as always, thank you for being the world's best co-host. Just thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll see you both soon.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player or YouTube. Share it with a colleague or tell us what you thought of it on LinkedIn. See you next time.